June 24th, 2009, 11:47 p.m. Michael Jackson left the Staples Center after his final rehearsal for This Is It. He told his crew, "I'll see you tomorrow." In less than 12 hours, the King of Pop would be dead, and the world still doesn't know the whole truth. The Staples Center in Los Angeles was alive with energy that Wednesday night. Dancers moved across the stage, perfecting choreography they'd rehearsed for months. The band tuned instruments. Lighting technicians adjusted spotlights. Everything was coming together. But in the middle of it all, Michael Jackson looked exhausted. At 50 years old, he was preparing for the biggest comeback in music history. 50 sold-out shows at London's O2 Arena. This is it, his final curtain call, his last chance to show the world that the King of Pop still had magic left. "From the top!" shouted Kenny Ortega, the show's director. "Michael, whenever you're ready." Michael took his position center stage. The opening notes of They Don't Care About Us began. He moved, but not with the explosive energy fans remembered. His steps were precise, but careful. His famous spins were there, but slower, more controlled. "That's it, Michael," Kenny encouraged. "Save your energy. We have months of shows ahead." But Michael's personal assistant, watching from the wings, saw something others didn't. The trembling hands, the way Michael would pause between songs, gasping for breath. The coat he wore despite the warm arena to hide how thin he'd become. But what nobody in that room knew was that Michael had barely slept in days, that his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, had been giving him propofol, a powerful anesthetic meant only for surgery, to help him sleep, that Michael's body was slowly shutting down. EG Live, the concert promoter, had invested millions in This Is It. Tickets had sold out in hours. The pressure on Michael was immense. He had to be ready. He had to be perfect. He had to be Michael Jackson. But Michael was struggling just to be Michael. March 5th, 2009, the O2 Arena, London. Michael stood before a crowd of press and fans, wearing his signature sunglasses and a black jacket studded with crystals. His voice was soft, almost fragile, as he made the announcement that would seal his fate. "This is it," he said, those 3 words that would become prophetic. "This will be my final show performances in London. When I say this is it, it really means this is it." The crowd erupted. Fans cried. Reporters scrambled to file stories. Michael Jackson was coming back. What they didn't see was Michael backstage, after the announcement, collapsing into a chair, his body shaking. "I can't do 50 shows, he told his manager, Frank DeLeo. "That's too many. I'm not 25 anymore." "The tickets are already selling, Michael. We're committed. 10 shows. I agreed to 10 shows. Not 50. But the machine was already in motion. EG had guaranteed the shows. Millions of dollars were on the line. Michael Jackson had to perform. Even if it killed him by May, rehearsals were in full swing, and Michael was falling apart. He would show up hours late to rehearsals, sometimes not at all. When he did appear, he was often disoriented, confused about choreography he'd known for decades. Some days he couldn't remember the lyrics to songs he'd sung thousands of times. Kenny Ortega grew increasingly worried. He sent an email to AEG executives on June 13th. "I honestly don't think he is ready for this, based on his continued physical weakening and deepening emotional state." But AEG's response was clear. The show must go on. Dr. Conrad Murray, hired by AEG at $150,000 per month, to be Michael's personal physician, assured everyone that Michael was fine, just tired, just adjusting to the rehearsal schedule. What Murray didn't tell anyone was that he'd been giving Michael propofol almost every night, that Michael called it his milk because of its white color, that Michael was becoming addicted to the one thing that let him sleep, a drug so dangerous that it should only be administered in hospitals. This is when everything changed. On June 19th, 5 days before the final rehearsal, Michael showed up to practice so weak that he couldn't complete the warm-up. His body temperature had dropped. He was shivering despite the warm arena. Kenny Ortega wrapped him in blankets and sent him home. "We need to cancel," Kenny told AEG executives. "Michael needs help, real help." The next day there was a meeting. EG executives, Murray, Michael's manager, but not Michael himself. Murray assured them everything was under control. He was a doctor. He knew what Michael needed. The shows would happen. Kenny Ortega was told to back off, to stop being an amateur physician, to focus on the show, not Michael's health. That was June 20th, 4 days before Michael's last rehearsal. 5 days before his death. Michael arrived at the Staples Center around 6:30 p.m. on June 24th. He looked better than he had in days, more energized, more focused. "I'm ready to knock this out," he told the crew. Some of the dancers later said he seemed almost euphoric, like a switch had been flipped. They ran through the entire show. "Smooth Criminal," "The Way You Make Me Feel," "Billie Jean," "Thriller." For brief moments, flashes of the old Michael appeared. The perfect moonwalk, the sharp spin, the magic that had captivated billions. During Earthsong, one of his most powerful performances, Michael poured everything into it. The emotion, the message about saving the planet, the dramatic staging with the dancer dressed as a tree being destroyed. It was breathtaking. "Wait a minute, don't miss this detail." Rehook number 3. At 11:47 p.m., after nearly 5 hours of rehearsals, Michael finished. He was exhausted but smiling. "That was great," Kenny Ortega said, hugging him. "See you tomorrow, Michael." "We'll pick up where we left off." "I'll see you tomorrow," Michael replied. They were the last words Kenny would ever hear Michael speak. Michael left the Staples Center with Dr. Murray. His security team followed them to his rented mansion in Holmby Hills, a wealthy neighborhood in Los Angeles. Inside his home, Michael was wired, unable to come down from the adrenaline of rehearsal. This was always the problem, the performance high that made sleep impossible. At 1:30 a.m. on June 25th, Murray gave Michael lorazepam, a sedative. It didn't work. At 2 a.m., he added midazolam. Michael still couldn't sleep. By 3 a.m., Michael was begging for his milk, the propofol, the only thing that could knock him out. Murray hesitated. He knew it was dangerous, knew he shouldn't be using it in a home setting without proper monitoring equipment. But Michael was insistent, and Murray was being paid $150,000 a month. At approximately 10:40 a.m. on June 25th, Murray gave Michael Jackson 25 milligrams of propofol. Within minutes, Michael stopped breathing. June 25th, 2009, Michael's bedroom in Holmby Hills. When Murray realized Michael wasn't breathing, panic set in. But instead of immediately calling 911, he tried to revive Michael himself. CPR on the bed, improper and ineffective. Frantic calls to Michael's assistant, not emergency services. Precious minutes ticked away. At 12:21 p.m., Nearly 2 hours after Michael had stopped breathing, 911 was finally called. "Sir, what's the address?" the operator asked. There was confusion. Murray didn't know the exact address. More time wasted. When paramedics arrived, Michael was already gone. His skin was cold. No pulse. No breathing. But Murray insisted they try to revive him. They rushed Michael to UCLA Medical Center, performing CPR the entire way. But it was too late. The damage was done. At 2:26 p.m., Michael Joseph Jackson was pronounced dead. "What you're seeing now is nothing." At 2:44 p.m., TMZ broke the news. Michael Jackson had died. The world didn't believe it at first. It had to be a hoax. Michael Jackson couldn't be dead. Not the king of pop. Not at 50. Not when he was about to make his comeback. But within minutes, it was confirmed. CNN, BBC, every major news outlet. Michael Jackson was gone. Outside the UCLA Medical Center, fans began to gather, crying, holding vigils, unable to process what had happened. The crowd grew, hundreds, then thousands, all united in grief. At the Staples Center, where just hours earlier Michael had been rehearsing, someone placed flowers by the entrance. Then another person, then another. Within hours, it became a shrine. Millions of flowers, candles, photos, handwritten notes. "We love you, Michael. Gone too soon. The king is dead." Around the world, the reaction was the same. In Tokyo, London, Paris, Rio, people mourned. Radio stations played nothing but Michael Jackson. MTV returned to showing music videos, something they rarely did anymore, playing Michael's catalog on repeat. For one day, the entire planet stopped to grieve. Within hours of Michael's death, the Los Angeles Police Department began investigating. This wasn't a simple case of natural causes. A healthy 50-year-old man doesn't just die. They searched Michael's home, found bottles of propofol, found evidence of numerous other medications, found Dr. Conrad Murray, who gave conflicting statements about what happened that morning. Murray claimed he only gave Michael a small dose of propofol, that he'd been trying to wean Michael off the drug, that he'd done everything right. But the evidence told a different story. You won't believe this, but... The coroner's report, released weeks later, was damning. Acute propofol intoxication. Michael Jackson had died from an overdose of an anesthetic that should never have been in a home. The manner of death, homicide. Dr. Conrad Murray was charged with involuntary manslaughter. The trial, which began in 2011, revealed the full horror of Michael's final weeks. The addiction, the pressure from AEG, the negligence, the preventable tragedy. Murray was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He served 2. Many felt it wasn't enough. A man was dead. The greatest entertainer of all time was gone. And for what? So 50 concerts could happen? So money could be made? In October 2009, just months after Michael's death, a documentary was released. This Is It. It was compiled from rehearsal footage shot in the final weeks of Michael's life. Sony Pictures had purchased the rights for $60 million, seeing an opportunity even in tragedy. The film showed Michael at rehearsals, running through numbers, working with dancers, perfecting every detail. To viewers, he looked focused, professional, in control. But now, knowing what we know, the footage is haunting. You can see the exhaustion, the moments where he's holding onto a dancer for support, the times when he's catching his breath between songs. This Is It made $261 million worldwide. It became the highest-grossing documentary ever at the time. But it also raised questions. If Michael looked this tired, this frail on camera, how did nobody stop the shows? How did this happen? More than a decade after Michael's death, questions remain. Was AEG responsible? Michael's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against AEG Live, claiming the company had pressured Michael and hired Murray, despite knowing about Michael's health problems. The trial lasted 5 months. In 2013, the jury found AEG not guilty. They determined that while AEG had hired Murray, they weren't responsible for Murray's actions. But emails presented during the trial told a troubling story. AEG executives discussing Michael's health, his missed rehearsals, the financial stakes. "We're paying his salary," one executive wrote about Murray. "We want him to understand what his responsibility is." Could Michael have been saved? If Murray had called 911 immediately when Michael stopped breathing, would he have survived? Medical experts say possibly. The 2-hour delay made Michael's death almost certain. If the concerns raised by Kenny Ortega and others had been taken seriously, if the shows had been postponed, if Michael had gotten real help, would he still be alive? What was Michael thinking those final days? Everyone knew something was wrong, but the real shock. Rehook number 6. People close to Michael said he was excited about "This Is It," that he saw it as his chance to remind the world why he was the king of pop, to show his children what their father could do on stage. But he was also scared. 50 shows, at 50 years old, with a body that was breaking down. "I just want to sleep," he told friends. "I just want to be able to sleep." That desire for sleep, that simple human need, became his undoing. Michael Jackson's death sent shockwaves through the entertainment world and beyond. He was more than a singer, more than a performer. He was a cultural icon who had defined multiple generations. From the Jackson 5's Motown hits to Thriller, the best-selling album of all time. From the moonwalk to elaborate short films that elevated music videos to art. From We Are the World to his humanitarian work. But his death also sparked necessary conversations about the pressure placed on performers, about the culture of celebrity, about what we demand from our icons. Michael left behind 3 children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, later known as Biggie. They were 12, 11, and 7 years old when their father died. At Michael's memorial service at the Staples Center, the same venue where he'd had his final rehearsal, Paris spoke through tears. "Ever since I was born, Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine. And I just want to say I love him so much." The children were raised by Michael's mother, Catherine. They've grown up in the public eye, dealing with the complicated legacy of having Michael Jackson as a father. Despite everything, Michael's music endures. New generations discover Billie Jean, Beat It, Smooth Criminal. His influence is heard in countless artists who came after him. The This Is It shows never happened. The comeback never came. But the legacy, flawed, complicated, brilliant, remains on June 24th and 2009 at 11:47 p.m. Michael Jackson left a rehearsal space for the last time. He was tired, he was pressured, he was struggling, but he was trying. 12 hours later, he was dead. Not from natural causes, not from age, but from a system that valued the show more than the showman, that valued profit more than a person. The final message nobody expected. Michael Jackson gave the world everything: his childhood, sacrificed for stardom, his privacy, consumed by fame, his health destroyed by the demands of being a legend. In the end, he gave his life, too. And for what? For 50 shows that never happened, for a comeback that was stolen, for one more chance to prove something he'd already proven 1,000 times over. There's a moment in the This Is It documentary that haunts those who watch it now. Michael is on stage, running through Earth Song. His arms spread wide, his voice powerful despite his exhaustion. He's singing about healing the world, about saving what's being destroyed. And then he stops and says to the crew, "We have 4 years to get it right, or it's irreversible. We have to be the range we want to see." He was talking about the environment, about climate change, about the planet. But now those words feel prophetic, like he was talking about himself, about his own destruction, about the irreversible damage that was being done. 4 years earlier, Michael had told friends he was exhausted, that he needed to stop, that he wanted to focus on his children, on healing, on life. But he didn't. He kept going. One more tour, one more show. This is it. And the truth that breaks your heart. The truth is this: Michael Jackson didn't have to die. His death was preventable. If people had listened, if profit hadn't come before health, if the show must go on hadn't been the only answer. On June 24, 2009, Michael said, "I'll see you tomorrow." But tomorrow never came for the King of Pop. And the world has been a little less magical ever since. In a world filled with hate, we must still dare to hope. In a world filled with anger, we must still dare to comfort. In a world filled with despair, we must still dare to dream. And in a world filled with distrust, we must still dare to believe. Michael Jackson, he dared until he couldn't anymore.